Greta Gerwig's take on Little Women. Now, I'd never read the book of Little Women, so really all I have to go all I have to go on is the 1990s version. And what I liked so much about, I guess, that film was that it had this warm atmosphere to it, where we got to spend a lot of time getting to know the characters of these women who grew up, about questioning their place in the world, and if they wanted to get involved with a man or wanted to find romance, and the troubles that happen within their family. It had great character chemistry, and it felt just kind of very warm and inviting. And Greta Gerwig, within her film, she more or less does the same. And I gotta admit, on that level of trying to just weave great character chemistry throughout, she does a great job. I mean, she's got a tremendous cast here assembled for it. Similar to even the '90s version of Little Women had a great cast here. So you basically have these four sisters who are living together in New England during the 1860s. Their father is off during war, so they're trying to make the best of their situation. Their mother's trying to help them out as well. They seem to be doing all right, though. They seem halfway between between being destitute and upper class. And by that I mean they live in a pretty big house. And I mean, from what I understand, this was true in like the novel too. They lived in a pretty big house. They had a handmaid and everything. It seemed like life was all right for them. And they seem like they're at the halfway point because they live next door to a very rich neighbor, and they're just down the road from a family living in poverty that they help out by bringing food to every once in a while. So occupying this home, we have Jo, who's played by Saoirse Ronan, and she aspires to be a playwright and a writer. She just wants to be a writer. She has so many great ideas that she wants to work hard at, and she wants to develop them and sort of become her own woman. You have Emma Watson playing Meg, who is conflicted about wanting to have a family, but also about wanting to desire fortune as well. So she's very conflicted about that, especially when the man that she hooks up with turns out to not be rich, and so she kind of has to decide between kind of like love or finance, which is not as easy a choice for her, in such times. You have Florence Pugh. Trying to say her name correctly. Florence Pugh, I believe is her name. She plays Amy March. She's probably one of my. She delivers probably my favorite role of the film. Just because she plays a little bit of like the upstart of the family. She wants to be a painter, and she feels like she's in a little bit of competition with Jo. They of course clash quite a few times, but she has like this great sort of like ease of kind of like commentary and kind of like sneering without sneering, that she delivers such a great performance within that role. And then of course we have Beth, played by Eliza Scanlon. And she does a great job for playing such a tragic character. For anyone familiar with Little Women, things do not turn out too well for Beth in the end here. And then you have some great supporting performances here. You have Timothée Chalamet coming back here, playing Laurie, which is a kind of a great reunion here, considering Greta Gerwig directed Lady Bird, where both Saoirse Ronan and Timothée Chalamet were in the same picture, and they kind of had a clashing of like a will they, won't they type romance happening there. So they're back again. You have Meryl Streep playing Aunt March, and she does she does a great job playing this sort of like like kind of like witty curmudgeon who basically believes the family is going to hell because they're favoring love more than finance. Like she's basically telling these women, look, times are tough, and in my day, you just married into, finding your way in the world. And that's what you need to do. And if you marry someone who's not rich, well, then you've doomed us all. And everyone's just kind of like, oh, Aunt March, you and your old ways. And then, of course, you got Laura Dern playing Marmee, the matriarch of the household, who just has such like the most perfect and warm smile, trying to keep the family together. Always has like just the right thing to say, and knows just the right time to comfort and, just what to say. That, when things are tough, when something terrible happens within the family, they go to her immediately, and it seems like everything will be okay as long as she is in the room. A lot of great other supporting performances here, even though they don't have too much to do. Bob Odenkirk is the father, who shows up a little bit more towards the later end of the picture. Just once again brings a great smile to it. Chris Cooper plays the next door neighbor of Mr. Lawrence, the upperclassman who's more than open to letting the family come in and read his books and play his piano and occupy his home and just check in on the girls anytime. And he always has... I love how he kind of like plays up that sort of like almost kind of like stereotypical upperclassman stance, where I swear every scene where he shows up on screen, he's just got his hands on his hips the whole time, just chest outward, with that long mustache. Like, I don't think he has a monocle, but I'm pretty sure he should have one. Just, jutting himself out all over the place. Just Chris Coopering it up. One of the things I did love about how the film is directed is that they take the non-linear approach, where we kind of jump around in time between when the girls are living in New England all together and when they go out into the world and basically go their separate ways into France, into New York, and basically go about trying to establish themselves as their own women. And I like how I love the choice they make. It's very deliberate here when, it's non-linear, but you can tell when they're cutting back and forth here because they use great use of color and lighting to tell you what is more in line with like the end of the timeline and what's more at the beginning. Because when we see the girls all together still living at home, everything is bright and luscious and cheerful. When it's snowing, it's bright and beautiful, and when it's spring and summer, the grass is green and the skies are blue, and it's all very wondrous. And then when we skip ahead more into like the future, things are a little bit more gloomy and cool and blue and more dark and shadowy, and it feels like things are more glim, where it feels like the past is more cheerful and nostalgic and someplace warm that we want to go back to. And I like how as the film kind of leans more into the present, like it starts off jumping right away into the whole incident with what ends up happening with Beth, and then we jump back and forth a few bunch of times. And I like how when we kind of come closer to the end, there's almost sort of like a balance there, where it feels like some of the dark and the light kind of balances. And I think, I don't know, I kind of got that mostly out of the scene where Joe confronts Mr. Lawrence on their property, and you can see that it's light out, but there's some shadows from the trees, letting just enough little bit of light in here and there, where things seem gloomy, but there's little glimmers of hope like spread throughout there. So I don't know, maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into it, but there are definitely some deliberate directing choices here that are great. In particular, the scene where Joe wakes up looking for Beth. Like she wakes up at one point looking for her, and she finds a very tearful and happy surprise for her. She wakes up again, which they cut so closely together, which is just perfect with the same staging and everything, but the different color palette where we can tell there's like kind of like a juxtaposition of what's going to happen here. It could have been even more chaotic. They could have like intercut like shot for shot the scenes, like go one by one here. But I get the feeling that might have been too chaotic here, because like I said, this film wants to keep a very warm and flowing pace to it. And I think Greta Gerwig does a lot of has a great way of like staging scenes that feel very comforting. There are a lot of scenes where just the girls are hanging out and just they have a little bit of back and forth, and they joke around a little bit. They have fun. The chemistry between them feels real and emotional. And it's just in the same sense that the 90s film felt inviting and a very charming film, so too does Greta Gerwig's film. It does lean more into a lot of like, the female empowerment aspects, which, we kind of expect from Greta Gerwig, but also the more rocky road into, becoming a woman. So basically kind of more or less the same take that we had with her previous film of Lady Bird is present here as well. It's not just because, Saoirse Ronan and Timothée Chalamet are once again together on the screen again, it's actually, yeah, because, you know, it's because, like, it seems like the logical choice, you know, Greta Gerwig to do Little Women. Sure, of course, that seems natural. And sure enough, it turns out to a very, very charming performance. Very charming performances, and just a very warm, inviting, and emotional story that I feel just hits all like the right beats. Like it's definitely the type of film you'd like to see around Christmas time. That and not just because it takes place around Christmas as well. It actually feels like a very inviting film. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So for Little Women, 4 out of 5 stars.